Hey everybody, welcome to our live painting class that we do every Thursday, the first Thursday of every month. And Happy New Year. We're so excited for you guys to be here for our new year of lots and lots of painting lessons. We have got so much to offer. We've got kids painting lessons, we've got Donna Dewberry, we've got Andy Jones, we've got Jesse, and we've got a really fresh new look on our Let's Paint website. And so there's just so much inspiration and creativity. So welcome to tonight's class. Tonight's class is a little bit about winter. The holidays are over, but winter is still such a wonderful time of year for everybody. So tonight we are doing kind of a longer, kind of a bigger canvas that we've done in the past, but we're doing this really pretty, kind of an abstract, easy winter scene. So that is tonight's class. And again, we're painting live. We've got Dylan in the studio. So while you guys are painting and while you're doing all of your techniques, if you guys have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll chat with you while we are doing this canvas. So first thing I want to do is show you guys the supplies that you are going to need for tonight's class. So I am working on a 12 by 24, a really long horizontal canvas. I always say in all of the classes that I teach, you guys could do a smaller canvas, a bigger canvas, whatever you're comfortable with. I really love to focus mostly on the techniques, the different ways that we use the folk art acrylic paint to get all of these different looks. So whatever size canvas you have is perfect. So again, I'm working on a 12 by 24 canvas, and then I'm using folk art acrylic paints. And I am using only 5 colors tonight, but all of the colors are available in our Let's Paint kit, which is the perfect kit. It's got 24 beautiful colors, 10 perfect brushes, and all of our Facebook Live lessons are using the supplies out of that kit. So it's a great kit to have, and then every month you've got the supplies that you need. Okay, so for tonight's class, we are, again, only using 6 colors. We are using Thicket, which is this beautiful dark green. We are using Navy, which is that beautiful dark blue. Dutch Aqua, which is one of my all-time favorite colors. And then always Wicker White. And then we're using this beautiful berry wine. So those are the colors that we're going to focus on. But what I also like to tell everybody, if maybe the berry wine doesn't match your palette at home, you could skip that. You could add a different color, but we are going to paint all of the techniques to match this painting. And then just really quick, so you guys get 10 brushes if you're using the Let's Paint Live kit. We are only tonight going to focus on the bigger brushes. So we have got this large flat 3/4 inch brush. And then we'll probably go to the 12, but no other brushes than that. We just want the large flat brushes that are available in the kit. And then the only other thing that we need tonight is a palette knife. And you will see that mine, I love a palette knife, is a little messy guy. But any palette knife will work, whether yours is metal or plastic. Some have different angles or different shapes. Anything will work. It's just a really fun technique of doing an abstract background and trees using a palette knife. And then you need your basic supplies. You need water, you need some paper towels, and then you need a palette. So with that, let's get started, you guys. Okay, so the first thing, again, I kind of mentioned to you, this is really a loose, really simple abstract painting. And when it's an abstract painting like this, one thing I like to stress is that we're not going to apply a pattern. We're going to do a few little tips and techniques to get placement when it's time to do the trees, but we're not going to apply a pattern. And the reason that we're not going to do that is because we're going to just be building color over color over color, and our pattern, we wouldn't see it. Just for the very beginning, we would see it if we did apply one. So I want you guys to really focus on the techniques and how every painting will be a little bit different. Okay. I'm going to try to leave that in so you guys can kind of reference it, but I'm going to scoot this so my canvas that we're working on, there we go, is what you guys can see. Okay, so the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to put Dutch Aqua and Wicker White onto my palette. Not too close, because you're going to be picking those up with a palette knife. Okay, So what we're going to do first, like all paintings, is we are going to build this really, really soft background. And to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is use my largest flat brush. And there is really no right or wrong to this. What I'm going to do is I am just going to kind of eyeball and create that line where the sky meets the ground. And I am just going to really lightly, not right or wrong. It's about a hand's width. I always like to measure with my hand. So if one hand, two hands, if the canvas is about 3 hands tall, maybe one hand can kind of represent where you put that line to separate your ground from your sky. So I'm just picking up the aqua, not any water, and I'm just doing large brush strokes of color for now just on the bottom section of my canvas. We're using a lot of these 2 colors. And then I'm going to take the wicker white on the same brush. I'm not even going to clean it in the water. And I'm just going to kind of fill in very random, very long strokes in between those strokes of Dutch Aqua. The colors will blend a little bit, but you're just getting paint onto the bottom of your canvas. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we are going to do the same thing with the top, but what you want to do maybe is just keep that line in your mind where the ground meets the sky. I'm going to add more Dutch Aqua to my palette and more wicker white. A larger canvas like this uses a lot of paint, but the folk art is so rich and creamy. It's such a wonderful formula that base coating is always just one coat. So what I'm going to do is the same thing that I did on the bottom, but again, I'm just going to really remember, I don't want those lines to blend together completely, where the sky meets the ground. Picking up the Dutch Aqua and just doing long strokes to fill in the top of that canvas. Where that line is, I'm going to do more of the wicker white. I'm not using any water, and I'm not putting my brush in the water at all. I'm just using the folk art acrylic directly out of the bottle. Filling in white and a lot of paint.
Yeah, as you're doing that, we've got a lot of people coming in talking about the snow days that they're having. And Kirsten and I were watching some of our friends in the snow in Nashville and stuff too. So keep on.
And we were very jealous here in Atlanta.
Right. We were ready to travel for that snow.
Oh.
And then just a reminder for everybody, Kirsten's using folk art, regular matte acrylic paint. These are not oil paints. And then someone had a question about Dutch Aqua if you didn't have Dutch Aqua.
Oh, so Dutch Aqua is a beautiful, almost a muted pastel aqua. There's, gosh, we've got so many beautiful blues that you could add a tiny bit of black, tiny, to get more of a dirty Dutch Aqua color. You could mix, even if you're just working with this palette, you could just break down the navy, mostly white, with a little bit of navy. It will be less aqua, but it'll be a really beautiful light blue.
You might get like more of a nighttime.
Yeah,
kind of
but it'll
there.
be beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've really just got long horizontal stripes, lots of paint, and all I want you guys to do now, again, not using any water, is just lightly brush all of that together. I don't want you to work the paint into itself so much that you get one solid color. I want you to just long strokes, almost like you're sweeping the top of the canvas. I just want you to bring all of that color together, but not too much where you create a solid colored background. You can see I've still got areas that are lighter, darker. We're just putting down the base coat for this abstract painting. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. And pick up a little paint if your paint is drying. One of the greatest things about working with acrylic is it does dry really fast, which allows you to just layer color after color after color, and nothing gets muddy or blends together. But if you need more paint, just pick up some of that wicker white and just sweep the bottom together as well. Just randomly blending those two beautiful colors.
Now, Kirsten grew up in Colorado, so this is probably just a memory that she had.
A memory as I sit here and paint snow.
You're painting one of her memories.
I absolutely love winter. Okay, so all we're doing, guys, I don't want you guys to compare the two, because really all we're doing still is just getting that beautiful color as our background to build on. So keep your line, which is where your ground meets your sky. Just kind of keep that as a reference, because you're going to do different techniques above and below that line. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the palette knife. A palette knife is something that I've absolutely loved working with. For years, I've used it to build backgrounds, to do simple paintings. It's such an amazing tool. And the only secret to the palette knife, I think there's 3 little tips that I could give you when using a palette knife. One is you always want to use it flat with the painting that you're working on. So flat with your canvas. You don't want to hold it like a brush. You don't want to angle it. You want to keep that palette knife plastic edge flat with your canvas. So that's a tip. And then the other tip is you want to be very, very light-handed. You don't want to mash into your canvas, because whatever you're applying with the palette knife, you'll have a lot of paint on there, and if you're light-handed, you'll just get such a beautiful application every time you touch the canvas. Okay, so something I do want to do tonight, which I normally don't do, is I've got this little spare canvas. It's not anything that you guys need, but I just wanted to have a practice spot tonight to kind of show you guys the techniques before we go on to our painting. So if you do want to have a little spot to practice, it could be anything. It could be a paper plate, it could be a piece of notebook paper, it could be another little canvas if you've got it. But just know this, I want to show you guys all of the techniques before we move on to our actual painting. Okay, so what we're going to do now is the second layer of our background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I have the Dutch Aqua and a lot of the wicker white on my palette. And I am simply, first what I'm going to do is scoop up some of that Dutch Aqua. And almost like the side of a butter knife. You're scooping it up. I want you guys to see that there's a good amount of paint on there, but you don't want to load just the tip. You want to load most of the flat edge of the palette knife. So then now that I've got just the Dutch Aqua on there, all we are going to do to build this beautiful background is we are going to start on one side of our canvas, not in the middle, and we are just going to rake that across, almost like you're really light-handed. Don't forget, you don't want to push down too hard. Very light-handed, and you just want to skim across that canvas, picking up paint every time that you do it. So let's see, I'm going to get out this little practice canvas. All you're doing, you're flat with your canvas, flat with your surface. You're very light-handed. You're not mashing down, because then your paint goes on and you scrape it right off. You're just allowing that to skip across the canvas. You can pick up a little, like if you've got a lot there, you can pick up some, but you don't want to just scrape a solid line. That will create more of a stripe. So you just want to start on the edge and just scrape across. Now, depending on what you're comfortable with, you can always turn your canvas and come at the other side, because you want that same technique all the way across your canvas. Or you can go from this angle and then you can come from this angle. I always tell people, move your canvas around. Move it around so that the way you're working on it is the most comfortable for you. It does not have to stay in one spot when you're painting. So again, light-handed, and you're just skimming across that canvas, creating a really irregular texture. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing that.
Now, Kirsten, we had a comment. If
Okay.
you don't have a palette knife, what could you use?
Okay, if you do not have a palette knife, we have come up with some really creative ideas. So an old gift card, an old credit card will work. It's a little bit different, the application, because you don't have that angled handle. But you could definitely, I don't have one, but you could pick up paint on the edge of a credit card or an old gift card and still skim lightly across, which would give you a very similar technique.
Since it's such a big area, you could probably, if you're really being thrifty, you could use like a big spatula.
Well, you can always
with
go
a
in the kitchen,
handful.
get a giant big spatula. You could do that. So all I'm doing now, guys, is I'm doing the same thing coming in from the left. Notice I'm not starting in the middle, but I'm coming in from the other side. Now what I'm going to do, same palette, I'm not cleaning it off, or same palette knife. I'm just going to pick up a good bit of wicker white and do the same thing. Just allow that to skim, or spatula, depending on where you live and how much snow you're getting right now. Oh, I got a lot right there. But just lightly skimming the wicker white right over the Dutch Aqua, so you get all of that layered color. But the great thing about the palette knife, to create this abstract background, for me, it would be almost impossible to do with a brush, because I would overthink everywhere that the paint is being applied to the canvas. Where with a palette knife, it just kind of gives you that creative freedom to let the tool do the work for you. So it just makes it a really natural, really organic, abstract background. Picking up more wicker white. And this is somewhere really based on what you like. If you like a little bit darker Dutch Aqua sky and you want more white on the bottom, add as much of the white in the Dutch Aqua until you get the look that you like. I'm going to keep the top a little bit more blue to represent that really pretty winter sky, and then I'll do more white below that line to represent all that beautiful snow that everyone's getting except for us.
I know, like everyone keeps coming in with their, everyone has snow except for us. It's not
Except
fair.
for us, and they're
Not
showing it on our class.
Yeah. Oh. We came to work on the wrong day.
We did. Oh, so upset.
We have a funny comment from one of our snow viewers. They say that, I'd like to know how the artist stays paint-free. No matter how careful I am, I end up with more paint on me than on the canvas. And I'll tell you, Kirsten's prerogative is typically to be covered in paint.
Well, this is only because they get mad at me when I'm teaching these classes. If I'm as messy as I am, I'm always covered in paint. Okay, so again, all I'm doing is coming in from the edge, whether it be this side or the other, and just layering with the palette knife. We've not done any different techniques. We pick up paint and we just allow it to skim across our canvas, really light-handed. Remember, the two tips that I have is stay flat with your canvas and then just let it kind of do its own thing and skip across that canvas. I've not added any water. I'm not cleaning my palette knife in between Dutch Aqua and wicker white. And you can see this is, again, something that is just so beautiful about the folk art acrylics, is we have layered and layered and layered, and the paint is just still so beautiful. It doesn't muddy, it doesn't blend together too much to where you don't see the difference in the two colors. The folk art acrylic is such a fabulous formula. I get so excited when I get a spot that's just perfect, like right there. I'm just picking up paint as we go. I'm keeping that line where the ground and the sky meet. I'm keeping that in my mind just so that I've got a little bit of separation between the ground and the sky. Okay, so I'm not going to clean my palette. I'm just going to set it on a paper towel. And what I'm going to do with that same 3/4 inch brush, I have not added water, I've not cleaned it at all. I'm just really lightly going to blend a few areas. If you like it this abstract, absolutely keep it. But if not, all I'm going to do is really lightly. Again, you don't want to overblend so you lose all of that beautiful texture. I'm just going to really lightly just blend a few areas. And this is based on maybe the temperature in your home, where you're painting. If your house is warm, your paint is definitely drying a little bit faster. So a tip, you guys, is dip your brush into the water, but then definitely dip it onto a dry paper towel. You don't want to add too much water to this abstract technique, or you'll lose all of those beautiful details. And less is more. You can always add more paint or more water, but once it's on there and blended, you can't take it off. So all I'm doing, whether it be with wicker white or just a little bit of water in your brush, I'm just very softly blending just a few areas. I like the texture and I want to keep that, but I just want to soften a few areas where maybe my palette knife placed down maybe too much paint or not enough, and I just want to softly blend that. How's everyone doing on their backgrounds?
I think people really like this technique.
I'm so glad.
Here's something to make us feel better. There's no snow in Charleston.
Oh, finally, someone that just has rain like us. I love where the palette knife creates this beautiful pattern. Those are areas that I'm not going to blend at all.
And for those of you guys who don't have time or you didn't get your supplies in time for tonight, this video will be saved on our Facebook page under the Let's Paint Live section, so you'll be able to come back and reference it. Even if this is a little bit too fast for you, you can go back and look at it right after we finish this live. So.
On our Let's Paint program, we have so many classes. So just like Dylan said, you can paint with us live every month, or you can paint at your own pace, which is just a fabulous way to learn so many techniques, so many different styles of painting. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more Dutch Aqua, same technique that we've been doing. I'm just picking up the Dutch Aqua on my palette, and I'm just going to skim across.
Yeah, that's okay.
Just to really get that beautiful color on the very top of my canvas. And maybe a little bit over there. All right, then what I'm going to do is I am just using a paper towel. I'm not going to stick my palette knife at all into the water. I'm just going to clean it off on a dry paper towel. Okay, so now I've got that line in my mind where the ground meets the sky, and what I'm going to do is picking up just the wicker white. Knowing where that line is, I'm going to do the exact same technique that I went left to right, but I'm going to go down. Can you guys see? Let me pull this canvas right here. See how I kind of created a line, maybe a snowdrift, fresh snow. I'm going to kind of create that line, but I'm going to do that by the same technique, but pulling down. Okay, so my little line is kind of right there where the dark blue, the Dutch Aqua is. Same technique, holding it very light-handed, flat to your canvas. I'm just going to pull that down. Not a perfect line. Allow that palette knife to do what it was doing when you did the sky, to just kind of place paint in different areas. You don't want the exact same. That's where if you guys push down and pull too hard, all you're going to do is scrape solid white lines onto your canvas. So light-handed and flat with your canvas allows you to get that really random abstract pattern. Lots of wicker white tonight. And I'm going to go all the way across my canvas, just giving a spot for our trees once we start to paint those. But just separating the sky from the ground. I'm going to add more snow in certain areas, but I'm not going to cover up all of that Dutch Aqua. The palette knife, I could never make anything that looked realistic like fresh snow with a brush, and the palette knife is just such a fun, easy way to get that beautiful texture of paint. Notice I'm always pulling down and just picking up paint as you need it, but still letting it just skim across the surface. Okay. I think that might be it for the bottom. Okay, so what you guys have now is two colors, creating the background, separating the ground from the sky, techniques of palette knife applying just these beautiful layers of paint, and then blending it softly. Whether you blended the sky, you could blend it more or less depending on your preference. And you should have a beautiful background. So the folk art acrylic, I think I mentioned earlier, some of your areas will be dry, some of your areas are still wet. That is absolutely okay, because again, what we're doing tonight is just laying color after color. So this does not have to be totally dry for our next step. Okay, so now for the fun part, which is the trees. I am, again, just cleaning my palette knife on a dry paper towel. At the end, I'll go in and wash it with soap and water, but for now, you just want to keep water out of all of the techniques that we are doing tonight. Okay, so let me scoot that so you guys can see it. All right, so doing our trees, we are only using our palette knife. And I'm going to get another little practice canvas. Again, you don't need this, but if you want to practice on a canvas or a notebook, a piece of notebook paper or the back of a paper plate, anything that you want to practice on until we move on to our canvas. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on my palette, I am going to first apply a little bit of thicket, a little bit of navy, and a little bit of berry wine. I'm going to put that down there so you guys can see it. Three beautiful colors, all available in the Let's Paint kit. Okay, so what we're going to do, I know I mentioned in the beginning about a pattern. What we are going to do is we are going to just place, just with a little line, each tree, and that will work as our pattern. So what I want you guys to do is load, you could do the navy. If you're a little bit nervous, you could even do the Dutch Aqua, which, you know what, I'm going to try to do it on here because it's the best color to do. But if you guys can't see it on the camera, I'm going to switch. But all we're doing is we're loading Dutch Aqua just onto the flat side of that palette knife. Not the big flat bottom, but just that thin flat side. So I'm just pouncing into the Dutch Aqua. And all I'm really going to do is use that as a pencil, a place to place my trees. I'm going to move that down, make sure you guys can see it. And if you guys want more trees, less trees, you love that open space, make this canvas your own and do whatever you guys love. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of envision 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trees in that first little grouping. And all I'm going to do with Dutch Aqua on the little side of my palette knife, I'm going to just kind of draw a line. Oh, you guys can see it. Can you guys see that on there? Mm-hmm. Just the faintest little line that represents where that tree is going to go. I'm going to do a little one right there. I'm going to do a bigger one right there. So we're not doing a pattern, but we're really just giving us confidence and a place to start when we do the technique. So that's my little grouping of trees there. Still using that Dutch Aqua. I'm going to leave an open space right there, but I'm going to do a beautiful tree that kind of sits on its own. Still just using that Dutch Aqua. And your line does not have to be top to bottom of the tree. Just a place so you know that's going to be open, that's going to be a grouping, that's going to be a big open area. Just something to represent where you will do the technique. So then I'm moving over to this little group. So 4 little trees. I'm going to leave a big open space. Do one a little bit taller, one kind of close next to it. I'm going to scoop my canvas. 2 right there, 2 right there. And then a little bit of space, and I'm going to put this really pretty navy blue one almost towards the edge. So it looks like nothing, but it's really just a confidence booster, a great way without applying a pattern to just give you kind of a guide on where to do the techniques to build these beautiful trees. Okay, so once you've got that on there, and everything will be covered up. So one of the techniques or the tips that I have when you're doing an abstract background like this, if that tree's too tall or that tree's too short or you want to go in there and move it around, don't try to cover that up with a new background. Know that the technique that we're going to put on top of it will cover that up. Because if you try to go in and correct all that, you're going to mess up the beautiful background, and then you won't have that really soft abstract look that we've worked on to build the sky. Okay, so simple placement of my trees. And then what I want to show you guys, I'm going to scoot that over to there, and I'm going to bring in my practice palette. Okay, so I'm just going to draw the ground. That is just the horizon line that we've already created on our painting. So when we do our trees, we're going to pick up the paint exactly like we did before, going into that navy blue on the flat bottom of your palette knife. And we're going to load about halfway from the tip to the middle. A lot of paint, but not so much that it's dripping or unmanageable. So you're picking up that navy, and then what we are going to do, let's pretend that this is my line. So those are the lines that we created on our canvas. All we are going to do, I never want you to start at the top of the tree, and I never want you to start at the bottom of the tree. I want you to start somewhere in the middle. Same technique, light-handed, flat with your canvas. I just want you to scrape across that line. Now the key to this, the only trick with this, is you don't want each line to be exactly the same, because then it won't look like a tree, it will just be perfect lines. So I'm jumping around from there to there, I'm scooting up, knowing that it's thinner at the top and thicker at the bottom, but the first thing you want to do is just kind of build a really abstract base for your tree. See how each stroke, I guess it's a stroke, each application with the palette is a little bit different because we're light-handed and we're staying flat with our canvas. So really at first, you just want to start filling that in. But again, you don't want to work down perfectly because then you'll create a row. You want to do one application here, you want to jump down to here. You want to kind of move around that entire tree so that each one is very loose and very random. Does that make sense? Picking up paint as you need it on the bottom half of your palette knife. And then some of them maybe are shorter this way. So you don't want them all to be the same width, and you don't want them to create a stripe pattern. So right there, to cover up our line, I'm going to do a shorter stroke. Just to get that really organic feel of a pine tree out in the winter storm. Now this is a tip if it's something that you are comfortable with. I said in the beginning, I love to move my canvas around. I think a lot of people think that once they put their canvas there, they need to stay there and they need to use their hand to do the different techniques. I think moving a canvas around so that you're most comfortable is key to getting a perfect painting. So I'm actually going to flip my canvas upside down and then maybe come with your palette knife from the opposite side. Same technique, but that way you're getting thicker applications on both sides of your tree.
Now, Kirsten, somebody had a question saying that they were putting their palette knife flat to the canvas, but their lines are coming out too thick. So you really just want that edge, right?
Well,
you want to get the paint on the edge.
You want to get the paint on the edge, but if your lines are coming out too thick, you're pressing down too hard. So what you want to do is still stay flat with your canvas. Stay flat with your canvas. Let me pick up a little bit of that navy. Stay flat with your canvas, light-handed, and maybe if you apply a little bit of pressure and then lift off, you're almost, it's almost like you're buttering toast and you're just...
You're doing a bad job.
Of buttering my toast, I know.
Well, that's what you want to do.
You want to do a bad job.
Just glaze it, yeah.
You want to just glaze it. So you want to stay flat. Maybe she's got, try to do one with a little bit less paint on your palette knife. Because you can always go in and add more, but you definitely want to stay flat and really light-handed.
Also, Kirsten's got paint really on the front half of that palette knife, not the whole length of it.
Yeah, about the front half. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so there's my little practice tree. I'm going to bring our canvas back into the...
And then, sorry, they had another question, someone else had a question. They're kind of wiping off their background when they're doing that, but that's okay because you're going to add layers onto it.
We're adding layers and layers, and they shouldn't be pushing down so hard that their background comes off. So maybe just a little lighter pressure. So these two trees in my finished painting are green. This one and this one are navy. So that same technique, picking up the paint, and really just going back and forth, not starting at the very top and not starting at the very bottom, and not creating stripes. You know what, she might mean that. So right there, a little bit of my background picked up and blended with my navy, but that is actually beautiful. What that does is just adds highlights and shading and just another element of color. So you're not really removing your background as much as you're blending your navy blue into that beautiful Dutch aqua. Does that make sense, maybe? Mm-hmm. So I'm focusing on this navy tree, picking up paint as I need it, and knowing that he's thinner on the top, thicker on the bottom. Another thing about this little grouping of trees, know that the green is going to overlap the navy is going to overlap the green, so you're really going to get just a beautiful blending of all of these colors that we're using. Where my long stem is, I'm going to add a little bit more blue, one to cover up my pattern, but also to just fill in that tree. But very light and just going back and forth. Sometimes I try to do my left hand, it doesn't work. So here's where I've turned my canvas upside down, just so both sides have the same application. But very loose. You don't want a solid blue. You like those breaks in the navy where you can see the beautiful Dutch aqua behind it, because that just gives you so much dimension. You can see you've even got texture on there. Might be hard for you guys to see, but the folk art acrylic is so thick you get beautiful texture on your finished painting. I'm going to skip down to this little tree, which you can see I've kind of overlapped what was my guide or my pattern, but I'm still going to use that as the guide and create that tree, knowing that he's going to kind of blend and bump up to that tree right next to him. And then I'm going to jump all the way over to this first tree. I'm going to add some navy to my palette. This first tree in this second grouping is also with the navy. So not starting at the top or at the bottom, just a few random different lengths, applications, picking up paint, and then just filling that in. That's perfect. You can see where it just kind of jumped across and you get that beautiful, almost like detail that would be impossible to get with a brush. It picked up a little bit of the Dutch aqua there. That's wonderful because it's blending it. The palette knife is doing all the hard stuff. Blending all of your colors. A few longer branches, just so it looks really organic and really natural. And a few little strokes down the center of the tree. I keep saying strokes, I guess they're not strokes. Palette applications. Just to really secure everything together without making it a solid navy blue shape. And do a little bit down the center, just picking up paint on the very end of that palette knife, the very tip, and almost pouncing just where the stem is, if there's any gaps, just to create a really strong center for each tree. But you can see each one is shaped totally different. That's what you want to get that really nice organic feel. So then my other one that's navy is this one on the far side of the canvas. And the same thing, I'm not starting on the top, but starting in the middle and just applying. Where there's more paint, it's a different application than where there's less. And that's exactly what you want to make it look really natural. I'm going all the way down to the ground, or the line that we created where our snow started building up. I might turn the canvas for this one. And that, again, is just a tip. You don't have to do that, but I just always want to tell people that if you're more comfortable moving your canvas, painting maybe in a certain direction, or holding your tool or your palette knife a certain way, moving your canvas will give you more confidence than trying to use the tool in a way that's not natural. And then I'm just going to get some more blue and kind of define the center of that tree by just kind of pouncing and getting a solid blue area, this dark navy, to represent the base of the tree. Okay, so you've got those beautiful navy trees. And then at the very end, all I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of navy on the flat edge of that palette knife. And I'm just going to do, like we did our lines for our placement of our trees, I'm just going to do a really simple line kind of coming down the center of the tree. A really thin top, just to kind of get that really natural branch that's in the top of all of these trees. Okay, so you've got 3 beautiful navy trees, totally different, small, medium, and large. We're going to do that exact same technique with our other 2 colors. Not going into the water, I'm just cleaning off my palette knife. You'll see it still has some navy on there, but that will not at all blend or mess up your other colors. So now, same technique, I'm going to go into this dark thicket. Loading my palette knife, again about halfway. A lot of paint, but not too much where it's dripping off. And these 2 little trees, let me pull that down so you guys can see it. These 2 little trees and that 3rd one in this grouping. So I'm going to do the same technique. Oh, picking up the green. And allowing it to go into the navy. Remember, I'm just using that straight line as a pattern, as a guide. But being very random. A stroke up top, a stroke in the bottom, a stroke in the middle. You don't want to create stripes. And then using the very tip of that palette knife to kind of build the base of the tree. You can see with the green how beautiful it is to have that Dutch Aqua and that white background built up behind there, because it gives you all of those details in each little branch. Now this little tree, you can still see the line, but he is really going to overlap a lot of the navy and a lot of the green, which just go right over the top of that. You'll pick up a little white. You can see a little white picked up right there, but that is the beauty of the palette knife, because look how it blended and shaded all at the same time, just because of the way you're applying the paint. Allowing that to overlap the navy. There's no right or wrong way to add the branches to this tree. You want a bigger bottom and a thinner top, and then you just want to kind of go in and fill in the center. Not perfectly, but just to give it a base. But you can see how they're just layered really loosely on top of each other. Then this one, this last one in this group, is also green. And the same technique for all of your trees. How's everyone doing with their palette knife? Creating beautiful winter trees?
Yep, we've got some references to Mr. Ross, Bob Ross. We got
no.
happy little trees.
Happy little trees out in this beautiful snowy field.
But yeah, I think everybody's really happy with it. We've got beautiful, lovely.
Enjoying the palette knife.
Yeah.
Using a tool is such a fun way to just try new techniques. All right, then I'm going to jump over to here. These 2 trees right here are also using this dark green thicket. Same thing, not starting at the top or the bottom, just randomly going in different sections so that you don't create a pattern. See right there? I'm not sure if you guys can see. Let's see. The white that was my abstract snow in the back picked up onto that, and it just allowed a beautiful blending of the green and the white, which gave you so much dimension. All right, I need a little bit more of this thicket. And do the second tree right here. Overlapping the first tree. A allow the colors to overlap and layer, because that's what gives you such a beautiful, almost like an oil paint look. Going in and doing just a little bit on the stems. And then I'm going to do that same thing we did with the navy blue. I'm going to load just that flat edge of my palette knife and just create a really detailed little top, a really thin part of these little pine trees. Just to give it a little bit of some details.
All right, we do have a comment.
Okay.
Amy says, this is very fun, but my trees look like power lines.
Like power lines.
What am I doing wrong?
Well, so Amy, I don't think they look like power lines. What I would do is randomly move around from top to bottom on each tree more so that you don't create a striped pattern, and maybe go in and fill in. I'm going to do it here. I'm going to do it on this one. So there's my power line tree. So it's almost like stripes. Let me create a middle or a pattern, a line. So we had our line. So if you do one at the top, one at the bottom, maybe one in the middle that's shorter left to right. And maybe, Amy, you're like me, you need to rotate your canvas and do the same thing coming in from the other side. So a little power line-ish, but then take the very end of your palette knife and just kind of create a thicker area where the trunk of that tree would be. So it's kind of breaking up that stripe pattern that maybe you created. But the key to this is everything being really loose and really random. And then you could go in and do a little top and then just like a little line to define the tree. So you just want to break that up and create a strong middle. That might help your power line trees, but I bet they're beautiful. Okay, so we've got our navy trees built, our beautiful thicket. Again, I'm not going to go into the water. I am just going to clean that off on a dry paper towel. And now I'm going to do the berry wine. And the berry wine was such a cute idea by Emma, who also teaches classes here at Let's Paint. She said, why don't you do a pop of a beautiful color for winter? And we picked the berry wine. So, same technique, loading the berry wine onto that palette knife, maybe half, a lot of paint, but not too much that it's dripping off. And I'm going to go, this little tree is that color, and then this little one mixed in the group. Same application, more paint, less paint, where you get all of that variety. All of those applications are with the same loading of the palette knife, and you can see the difference in how random it is. You don't want them to be the same length. Some longer, some shorter. And just let that palette knife drag across the background. I'm going to flip that over because it's more natural for me to use that tool. That way I'm using it in the exact same way, and my application is exactly the same. But it evens out both sides. And then I'm going to, again, kind of define the center of the tree by just shorter applications with the same technique of the palette knife. Flip that right back around, maybe a few more, and then a few little ones for the top of the tree. And then still that really, really detailed top, just with the edge of the palette knife. And then I'm going to sneak over here, one more tree in this beautiful berry wine. So our Let's Paint program, we have so many artists, and I think I mentioned Donna Dewberry. Donna Dewberry's all-time favorite color is this beautiful berry wine. So if you go and do some of the lessons and the beautiful projects that she teaches you on Let's Paint, you'll use a lot of this beautiful color. So you guys can see I'm not going around the navy. I'm not avoiding it. I'm allowing it to touch that navy tree because it's naturally blending where the two meet. Whoops. So see where the navy is just kind of meeting the berry wine. But the colors are still staying so beautiful and rich, but they are overlapping and blending, which just gives you, again, such a beautiful technique, something that you would naturally do with oil paints. I'm going to create the center of that tree with just a few thicker applications just down the center, the very top with a line for detail. Okay, so you guys should have a beautiful base coat, 3 beautiful colors, and just a really soft winter scene. So now all we are going to do is we are going to accent each one. We're still only using our palette knife. We've got some wicker white already loaded on our palette, cleaned off my palette knife with a dry paper towel. And what we're going to do here, let me show you, let me get out my little practice canvas. So just like we did in the beginning, I'm loading wicker white onto my palette knife. Most of it, maybe 3/4. And what we're going to do here is we are going to add snow to each tree. Not everywhere, not to every branch. We've already built our tree, but we almost want to apply it as if it's sitting on the top of a branch. You know, when the snow builds up, it kind of sits and hovers on top of a big branch. So to create that look, what we're going to do, we're going to load the white on our palette knife, and we are going to use more of the flat edge. So not the flat edge completely like we did when we were applying our pattern, and not flat when we did our entire tree and our background. We're going to be at a little bit of an angle. Just like an angle brush, you can use more or less of it to get a thinner or thicker application. Kind of view your palette knife as that. Kind of like an angle brush, you get a lot of paint applied to your canvas, you get less applied to your canvas. Well, if you kind of break the difference, you get in between applied to your canvas. So that is what we're going to do to apply the snow. So picking up the wicker white and just brushing it. I have a white background on this little cheap canvas, so it's harder to see. But at an angle, still a really soft grip, you're just applying it to a few areas. Let me do it on this little group of navy trees.
So as you're doing that, we had a few questions. So if you're, it might be a good idea to paint some of the trees in the background behind the others first. That's kind of what Kirsten did. So you put the ones in the back, and then you can kind of like switch on and off layering. And then we had another question about a painting you did a while ago with trees and a paintbrush. Judith really loved that and wondered if we could do something like that again. And Kirsten's always making paintings, so I'm sure she could.
We could, definitely. Thank you. Okay, guys, so see how I'm not building another tree. I'm not doing as many applications with the palette knife. I'm just doing a few random ones where the snow would build up on the edge of these trees. And I'm using not the flat side, not the skinniest side, but kind of breaking the difference. So you've just got another way of applying paint with that palette knife. Can you guys see that on the navy blue tree? Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to do that same thing on all the trees. And I'm going to just go into the wicker white. You might pick up a little navy, you might pick up a little green. That is okay, because getting a little bit of all of these colors onto your canvas will really just tie everything together. And you're just allowing it to be in random areas to represent where the snow would build up out in your little forest. This berry wine tree we just did, and it's wet, but that's okay because like you can see right there, the berry wine and the white blended a little, but it's so rich and creamy that it does not at all muddy. It just adds a little highlight to each color that you're doing. But the key to this is, again, I think that was a good kind of way to describe it, like an angle brush. You can use more of the palette knife, less of the palette knife, or in between to change how much paint you apply to your canvas. So this little guy, I'm going to just add just a few little touches.
For everyone joining a little bit later, just know that Kirsten is about to finish this painting, but this video will be available right after we finish the live in our media section of this page. You can just look at videos and it will be published there. So you'll be able to go back and rewatch it. And also, Kirsten's been talking about our Let's Paint program over this the course of this lesson. And if you want to see other lessons like this and some of Kirsten's other paintings, which we referenced a little while ago, you can just go to plattonline.com/Let's Paint and find all of these, plus a bunch of our other instructors with a bunch of different skill sets.
We have so many great lessons. And also join our Let's Paint community on Facebook. It's such a great way to share ideas and share techniques and ask questions. So it's such a creative community. Okay, so you guys, I have added snow more or less, again, based on what you like, to each little tree. And then what I'm going to do is just like we did in the very beginning. I'm going to pick up a good bit of wicker white on my palette knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of redo the snow on the bottom just to add more and to get it closer to the base of each tree. So I've already created that beautiful line where the snow is at the bottom, but I'm just going to go to the bottom of that tree and just add some more. And the reason I'm doing that is just to add another layer of color, just of wicker white. Cleaning off that palette knife. Again, no water, just on a paper towel. Picking up the wicker white and just adding. You don't have to add more snow, but if you kind of want to have each tree almost sitting in a little, almost like a little snowdrift, I'm just going in there under each tree. Same technique, really light-handed. Pulling down on the canvas and just adding more of that beautiful texture to the bottom of each little tree.
And for those of you who are curious, our Let's Paint program is a really big program that encompasses a lot of different programs. So tonight we're teaching you through our Let's Paint live channel. Andy Jones does our Let's Paint with Folk Art series, Donna Dewberry with Folk Art One Stroke, and our brand new program, Art Lessons with Kelly. So those are mainly geared towards tweens and kids. So there's a lot of different programs for different people. I know we had a little bit of discussion going on in the comments.
And so much. We've got florals and landscapes, like mine's abstract, but we've got beautiful, we've got animals, we've got florals, we've got seasonal things. We've got something exciting next month. Again, the first Thursday of every month is our Facebook Lives, and next month is kind of an exciting personalized Valentine's canvas. That would be great for whether you give it for a gift or you do it together as a family, but something really exciting every month. Okay, so how's it going with the snow? Everyone's added their snow. They've got this beautiful texture. All of their colors work beautifully together. And this is just a little fun technique that we're going to do at the end. And it is something that we've all been doing for years. And we are just going to splatter our canvas just to really give it the final touch and tie everything together. So my only technique with splattering is I'm getting my brush wet for the first time. I am dipping it in more wicker white. Need a little bit more on my palette, not very much. And about equal parts water and equal parts paint. You just want a really thin consistency. I'm going to get a little bit off on my paper towel. Remember, less is more. You can always add, but you can't take it off. And then for me, the simplest way to splatter is I take a second brush, any size will work, and I hold it on the end, and then I hold my loaded brush on the end, and I simply tap that top brush to the bottom brush. And what that does is it just allows you to control your splatter. A lot of people use their thumb or their nail, and that works perfectly as well, but I get it everywhere then. Whereas if I just tap it on this brush handle, it's just a really controlled way to add that splatter. I'm adding a lot of splatter over a few of my trees just because you can really see the details then, and it's like a fresh snowfall. But just a really simple way to just kind of tie it all together with that really simple technique. So there is our beautiful winter wonderland that all of you guys are experiencing. Hey, one thing I want to show you guys really quick because it's a great new product that we absolutely love. So back there, can everybody see this beautiful, oh, let me get it. So this is our, let me make room on my table for this, our rotational organizer, which this is so exciting because 1, it holds your Let's Paint kit. 2, it keeps your paints perfectly organized, whether you do it by color, you can put them bottle in where your lids and your dots show, or you can do it where the bottom of your bottle shows. But just a great way to organize your paint and something that we love to use here with our Let's Paint classes. So I just wanted to show you guys that. That's our new product. So thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget, we do Let's Paint Live the first Thursday of every month. Next month is super exciting, a little Valentine's personalized canvas with Jessie. So that's a great class. Make sure that you guys watch it. And hashtag Plaid Crafts, your paintings. We absolutely love to see everything that you guys have painted. So thanks for joining us. Happy New Year, and see you guys next time. Bye.